Hi, I'm Mike Martin with Casio, and welcome back to my office, where we're going to continue our tutorial on the step sequencer in the XW series. So let's continue right where we left off. So as in the first video, I'm using the XW-G1, but the step sequencer works identically on both the XW-P1 and G1. Just some of the sounds might be different. So in the previous video, we quickly put together 3 tracks, and because I neglected to save my work, always remember to save, we're going to have to pick up from a blank sequence. Now I've went ahead, using the mixer, and chosen my sounds for each of my parts in advance. Now that my sounds are chosen, this is how quickly we can put together these tracks. So I've briefly muted the kick and snare tracks to show you again some of the things that the sliders can do. So in the case of the hi-hat track, if I move the sliders, it changes the note number, in this case from a closed hi-hat to an open hi-hat. Currently, I've only changed the note for step 7. If I use the switch immediately to the left of the slider, labeled 1 through 8 and 9 through 16, the sliders are now controlling the second row of events. So I now have an open hi-hat on step 7 and 15. The slider A-B switch allows me to control note velocity. So instead of changing note number from a closed hi-hat to an open hi-hat, I can change where my accents are. And again, I can use the 1 through 8 and 9 through 16 switch to choose which row or which set I'm controlling. The master slider overrides all of those and sets all of the steps back to a specific velocity. So next we're going to record a bass part. So press the Part Plus button 3 times to move from the hi-hat track, which is part 3, to the bass track. So as we get ready to do our bass part, one thing to keep in mind is that the keyboard is always live with your primary tone, not necessarily the bass sound or other instrument part that you want to record. We'll get to that in a moment. So first let's try putting together the bass part just using the sliders and switches on the front panel. So with the sequencer running, we can just use the switches here on the front panel to trigger steps. Now if you'd like to change the pitch of the notes, again like the hi-hat part, you can use the slider to control what note is being played on each of those steps. I can go to the second row of sliders, and if I move a slider, that's going to activate a note on that particular step. So if the notes you heard when you moved the slider weren't exactly the ones you were looking for, there's actually a way to assign different notes to the slider. So if you press and hold the slider A-B button, this brings up a menu on the screen where you can change the notes or range of notes that occur when you move the slider up and down. To make it easier, press the menu button and you'll actually find a preset list of scales: major, minor, Dorian scales, Lydian, Mixolydian, and so forth. But don't worry, if you'd like to play your bass track or any of the other parts from the keyboard live, there's an easy way to do it. Press the Edit button. Select Step Edit. And now the keyboard is live for that particular part. So in the case of the bass part, we can now press Start Stop and begin playing the bass line that we want. Moving on to the chordal track, which by the way I've set to quarter notes rather than 16th notes. And if you recall in the last video I showed you how to do that on the track parameters page. So here's the chordal part that I'm going to play live from the keyboard. Last but certainly not least is the key shift button. When you select this, the keys in the bottom octave of the keyboard will transpose the sequence we've made into any key that you want on the fly. So this concludes this video on the step sequencer in the XW series. Stay tuned to this YouTube channel for more videos on how to use the XW. See you soon.